Welcome back to Above the Fold. It's another Sunday sit down. I'm Ted Lund. Today's guest is Chris Massicotte, who is not only a candidate for the Key West City Commission, but also the president of Last Stand of the Florida Keys. And Chris, I know that you are just getting into your campaign as a District 5 candidate for City Commission. Give us a little background on how that's going.
Yeah, thanks, Ted, and thanks for having me again on your Sunday sit down. It's going, really well. This is a very small race as compared to my county commission race, which encompassed all of the keys. This is just a small neighborhood, of around 4,500 voters, and it's an August nonpartisan election. So, it's a different way of campaigning. We are talking to neighbors, we are identifying voters. And then we'll make sure that they vote come August. One development is that since we last spoke, is that the one other candidate that was in the race, Harry Russell,
Yes.
withdrew his candidacy on December 3rd, which was also the day that our interim city commissioner, Greg Velez, was appointed. So Greg Velez has said repeatedly that he doesn't expect that he would be running. So, there is a chance that, this could be won in June if no other candidate comes out. So, we're just campaigning as if we do have an opponent and we do have, and having conversations with voters and, listening to what their needs are, and then hopefully applying that once I'm honored enough to serve on the city commission.
Well, we had, I know the last commission meeting, the first of the month here, one of the most substantive city commission meetings that we've had in quite a while, with quite a number of somewhat controversial topics. The one really crucial one being the water quality testing contract with Stantec, and there were a couple of things there that kind of struck me. One, the city staff did not follow through with the direction of the commission that they actually wanted to see the contract. They came back with a scope of work, which then seemingly was edited and redlined by two of the biggest benefactors of pollution, water pollution, in Key West. Tell us a little bit about what happened there, and kind of your thoughts with Last Stand with that.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it like them being benefactors of the water pollution. I would say they're the source of the water pollution. We're talking about Pier B and the cruise ships, and some of the pollution that comes from the silt and that dragging all of that from the harbor into the channel and stuff. And the biggest thing that happened there was that under Florida law, turbidity is considered a pollutant, and it is considered a pollutant when it can demonstrably show causing harm to sea life, to water quality, clarity, and things. And for however and whatever reason, the Pier B's law firm, and led by Bart Smith, redlined the scope of work to reclassify turbidity, which is the amount of particles in the water, as not a pollutant. So they don't have to track that, and they don't have to, according to our city charter, they don't have to track it, and they don't have to mitigate it if it turns out to be too high. And I don't care what anybody says. Like, Florida law says it's a pollutant. We know that it harms sea life. We know that when it comes through, when a natural occurrence happens, like a hurricane or something, which is few and far between, that happens, and that's one thing. But when we're doing that 2, 3, 4 times a day, and churning up all of this, junk from the bottom, and it resettling on top of, sea life, on top of coral, and just, kind of suffocating it. That's a pollutant, and that's, kind of where we wish that the contract, we had seen the contract itself rather than just a scope of work, because then they took that scope of work and just put it into a contract that we weren't able to see before it was signed. The good news of that, and I said this in the last interview. I was so disappointed when they broke off the ties with the college because we were getting comprehensive testing, we were just about to be getting good analysis, and the
Hmm.
cost of that was offset by a federal grant. And all of a sudden that, we weren't able to continue with that because of some, interlocal agreement that was allowed to expire. Like, I don't buy that for a second. So the good news is this Stantec contract is only for a year. So we can go back and look at it and renew it and Stantec is a very good company. Don't get me
Yeah,
wrong.
I
Just
wanted to
what,
point that out. It's not that Stantec's not the right people to do that.
right,
It's just the way that it was handled um,
correct.
by city staff.
And And like I said, that contract is only for 1 year. So a year from now, we can continue our relation with Stantec, but we can, direct them to test things that, really matter to the health of our, nearshore waters. And, by that, token, the health of our economy. Because if we don't have clean water, we don't have a vibrant reef, we're that's not a good thing.
Well, and that's one of the things I want to point out to folks too. Back in the late 2000s, I had an opportunity to serve on the Sanctuary Advisory Council, and actually at the time had my radio show, had the superintendent on, and I was actually involved in helping to craft the first State of the Sanctuary report. And one of the interesting things that came out of that is, and it's a basic scientific fact, that what coral needs is nutrient-free, gin clear water. And that's kind of our baseline corals, elkhorn, staghorn, things like that. There are other species of corals which have been referred to by the scientists that have testified on behalf of Pier B development that coral is thriving in the harbor. Well, I can tell you as a fishing guide for over 25 years and also serving on the Sanctuary Advisory Council, the baseline corals are not thriving. The gorgonians are not thriving. The sea fans are not thriving. All of that live bottom in that main ship channel and into the harbor is in fact not thriving. And what
Right.
is thriving is the more resilient plating corals that you'll find growing on the pilings and on the seawalls and things like that. So that's more of a case of a shifting baseline where people are seeing stuff, but they're not seeing what we saw 25 years ago. And that
Exactly.
happens
And
quite a bit.
you
So,
know, I've been diving in the Keys for just under a decade, and the difference between 10 years ago of what the reef looked like versus today, and we have classified our reef now as functionally extinct, and at this point, why wouldn't we try everything we can to save, what we have left to try to revitalize it? Like, we have so many organizations, like Last Stand and
yes.
like, I Care and all of these other, coral restoration, reef relief, et cetera. Um, why wouldn't we, try to restrict things that we know harm the coral reef? And you were talking about the sea fans in the channel and everything. If you remember during COVID, when the cruise ships stopped coming, sea fans started to grow again in the
Yes.
channel and in the harbor. So they just get torn right back up as they, as these giant ships pass through. Our channel is not that big. It is not that deep, and we are trying to, send bigger and bigger ships through that. And, right now we had a compromise. We're down to one ship a day. We had three giant ships a day. I'm okay with that, the one ship thing, because that was an agreement that we came to. I'm not okay that the state came in and ruled
Correct.
our vote, but here's where we are, and we made progress. Don't want to go back, and I'm very worried that they are setting the stage to bring cruise ships back.
Well,
And
I would
I
agree. And
mean,
I've been
that's one of
hearing
the
that.
big things that we're watching at Last Stand.
Yes. I've been hearing that as well from some people pretty
Yeah.
well placed in
And
the tourism industry that it looks like that unfortunately could be a result of all this. And in fact, Mr. Walsh is a huge donor to Governor Ron DeSantis, and that's kind of how this whole thing has evolved to where I believe it was overruled twice. Is that correct? Before they finally got it to stand.
It was
I want,
overruled twice, yes.
yeah, and
And
then they were
then,
able to finally come back and get the smaller ships and the one ship a day. But yeah, you're gonna have
yeah,
to
and the
keep an
one
eye on
ship a
that
day
one.
kind of, we do. We will definitely need to keep an eye on it, especially at the Mallory Square Pier, where, seasonally we have these smaller ships with American Cruise Line coming
Hmm.
in, and it's great to see these ships that have 100, 200 passengers that stay overnight, that go to shows, that go to dinner, that drink at bars. These other cruise ship passengers where they have, all their meals on board and they've got the drink package. They come off the ship, they look around, and then they get back on. Maybe they buy a t-shirt. And we want to get the right kinds of visitors. And I understand, the initial exposure to Key West and things like that, but there's real no evidence about that. People who come here and stay for a longer time are more likely to come back than people that just see it, however briefly. And that's, data that's collected by the TDC. So we know we want to attract people to come here, to stay here. And the longer you stay, the more money you spend per day. And so, I'm not an anti like business, anti-tourism thing. I know why we
Hmm.
as a community have nice things, right? We just have to make sure that we are balancing that between our very fragile environment, and that's what Last Stand is trying to do. I understand that these large developers and Pier B and the big business owners, they are in the business of making money. I get it. We have to come together, and the more people that we can, attract to voice their opinions, to voice their concerns, the stronger that we get, and the more that our elected officials will listen to us. And I'm thrilled just to tell you that, we have nearly 600 dues paying members at Last Stand. We have hired an executive director in the past year. And when you have somebody who is solely dedicated, their job is to continue to advance the values in our mission. We've just gotten stronger. We've had so many great successes. The Stantec thing notwithstanding, if we hadn't been pushing, I have a feeling they would have been continuing to sweep that under the rug and say, "Oh yeah, testing, we'll get to that,"
Well, yeah,
we're funding that.
it was supposed to be on three previous commission agendas, and it got pulled every time because they weren't making any progress with it. But hopefully now that
Well,
they'll
they
get
weren't
this
making any
through.
progress because they didn't want to.
Yes, yes. So
So, I
let's
mean,
let's
those are
stick
some
with
of
the
the,
city. Let's stick with the city and talk a little bit about this garage project that they're
yes.
having a workshop on Tuesday at 2 p.m. At City Hall.
Yeah, so, and I just posted a video on this yesterday, and you can find it on my county city commission Facebook page. They are proposing a three-level parking garage around the firehouse on Simonton Street, where there currently is 65 spaces that are on the ground. And they, it's metered, and the city, gets $6 an hour for it, and you get
Hmm.
4 hours of free parking if you are a local with a pass holder. And some employees outside of the Key West do also get some level of parking availability there. But I was there yesterday, on a Friday in high season, right at happy hour, and there were plenty of spaces. There were, and so we need to make a real comprehensive study. Do we need this parking? If we do, are we just going to attract more people to drive into downtown? And what is truly the impact and the need for just 85 net new spaces when we have almost 10,000 parking spaces in Old Town as it is? Is that really going to make a difference to have that giant, construction and that structure that's just going to look so out of place? And they just released some new renderings, and I mean, I can't wrap my head around it right now. I'm not saying right now that I'm opposed to it. I'm saying I want to learn more, and we need to do these studies. Because the next thing that we need to think about is the future of transportation. The parking garage that we built over, by Keys Energy is 30 years old.
Hmm.
30, and it's going strong, and we expect it to, it's being maintained very well. But 30 years from now, we're going to have fully autonomous cars. We're going to have the ability to get people in and out very quickly and not, cause a lot of traffic. We can put parking garages elsewhere so that, when you're ready to get picked up, you just get on your phone and your app and your car shows up for you because, I mean, we already have that technology and it's coming in the next 10, 15, 20 years. So if we are going to have a structure that's going to be functionally there for, let's say, at least 50 years, do we really need that? And those are the decisions that if what we make today will affect what Key West is like in 20 years. And that's another reason why I'm running and getting involved because, it really matters the decisions that we make. And I have a lot of concerns and a lot of hesitation about this particular project and this parking garage, especially, and you referenced Chris Hamilton's article, especially when we're ignoring and turning our backs on mass transit. Why? Of course we're going to need more parking if we're not
That's a
allowing
really
people
good
to get.
point because the parking garage that already exists was built specifically with that in mind for employee parking in that area. So
Mhm,
the Duval Loop not only served the tourist sector, but also the service industries. People could park
mhm.
there and then get on the Duval Loop and get to wherever they're going to work. And now we don't have that, which to me is kind of a disappointment in a city that has almost $1 billion worth of assets and no liabilities, and they can't fund mass transit. What
And
is
the two.
interesting though is the plan that Chris talks about in his second
Mhm,
story that we posted this morning is that intermodal station out on Stock Island, which was I know going to be an integral part of the freebie Conch Connect. So they're looking at 255 parking spaces out there. I think 35 affordable housing units for the transit department, and maybe some mixed use retail, which just seems like a better use out by the Garden View Apartments than it is with prime real estate in the city.
right. And like I just said earlier, is that as technology advances, the inconvenience of that parking garage being on Stock Island will be reduced, every year that, we as technology advances, and we have to think about that. Do we
Hmm.
need this giant structure smack dab in Old Town? We had one, and I can't seem to find photos of it, but there was a parking garage built on that same exact site in the 70s, and I guess it was torn down in the early 2000s.
Hmm.
And why was it torn down? Why did we, that only lasted for 30 years? Like, it just seems to me that we need to learn lessons from our past and understand, how our future will be affected by the, projects that we take on today. And
Yes,
and that's,
absolutely, no doubt.
a big reason. The theme of Last Stand's annual meeting is, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And, we need to learn from what we've done in the past. We need to make sure that we make very good, conscious decisions today so that what happens tomorrow was intentional and we understand what the consequences are of some of these projects that we take on.
Yeah, and you mentioned your meeting this year. I know that's coming up. That's going to be at Williams Hall. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it is at Williams Hall on Tuesday, February 3rd. It's the week before the city commission meeting. And we are just so thrilled at the growth of Last Stand over the past year. You have to RSVP. The website is keyslaststand.org. And there are still a few spots left, but there's a capacity issue at Williams Hall, and last year we were at capacity. So please, if you haven't RSVP'd yet, please do. And we're going to have some really special guests. We're going to have Captain Steve Friedman talking about Florida Bay and the importance of preserving that. And he's a Isla Morada Village Councilman, and he's also our newest Last Stand board member. We're thrilled to have him on board. And then we're going to have a panel discussion with the former city planner Katie Halloran, who is making a public appearance for one of the first times since she left the city, and with Arlo Haskell, who is the treasurer of Safer Cleaner Ships, and a historian. And we're going to just discuss the future of city planning, the future of how the decisions that we make today will affect what our quality of life is tomorrow, and what Last Stand's role is and should be in the future and today. And I love it when we can get lots of people at commission meetings when it's important. One of the great accomplishments I feel like from this past year in the city was the Casa Marina project being postponed because of what they were asking for, and it was just frankly too much. And we were able to, as Last Stand and other organizations, mobilize and packed that room, and the commissioners had literally no other choice than to say no to this particular project. And the reason why I personally objected to it is because they were asking to add 28 or so more transient hotel rooms, villa style apartments, and really focus so little on the actual affordable housing and workforce housing that we just desperately need in that area. And then they wanted commercial laundry facility. So all of that would have required a zoning change from residential to tourist commercial. And I'm sorry, that's a leap that I can't take. And and the people that live around there, did not buy their house thinking that the property next to them was now suddenly going to be a tourist commercial area, which allows them to build almost anything that you can imagine. And so I, as a city commissioner, will not be able to support a zoning change there. But I, as a city commissioner, will dedicate myself to figuring out what to do there, because it is a horrible eyesore. It is an environmental hazard with all of these, decaying buildings just sitting there for the last 20 years. So, we have to just come up with creative solutions, and, not everybody's going to agree with it, but we just need to make conscious, thoughtful decisions. And that was one that I was proud that Last Stand got involved with.
And for people that might not be familiar with that controversy, that was traditionally a barrack-style housing for Casa Marina employees that was damaged, I believe, in Irma, and
No, it
has
was
never
Wilma.
been.
That was
Oh,
20
was it
years
Wilma?
ago.
Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
it certainly wouldn't seem like there'd be a problem for it to continue to be employee housing,
hmm
but definitely not 27 or 28 more hotel rooms.
No,
So
and it's zoned
that's a
for
little bit
that
of a.
exact thing, and you can, yeah, and you can see the old buildings, and some of
Mhm.
them were freestanding single family houses, and some of them are I don't like to use the word barrack style, but they were apartment style residences
Mhm.
for workforce, and that's what it can and should be again. And let's not forget that the hotels, and like, let's just use Park Hotels in Casa Marina as an example. It's not like that is a zero revenue generating thing. They will get rent
Mhm.
from their workforce, and so it might not be the revenue and profit center that more hotel rooms would be, but it is still revenue generating rather than a cost sink, because they're still paying taxes on it. They're still
Sure.
paying upkeep costs, or whatever little upkeep costs there is, because they don't do anything to it. But there is just so much value in redeveloping that in the correct way.
Now, I know that you had mentioned before we went on the air that you are going to be streaming the panel discussion in case people can't get admission or get tickets. But if they do want to get tickets, they want to get involved with Last Stand, how can they do that?
Go to our website. It's keyslaststand.org. It's right on the top of our page about the annual meeting. It's also right on the top of our page about becoming a member and signing up for our email list. I said we had about 600 dues paying members, but we also have an email list in like the thousands. And if you think about, we just have, 85,000 people in the county, to have 600 dues paying members, to have thousands, like I think we're right now at 3,000, people that live in the Keys that get our email communication. That's pretty powerful. And we continue to grow because people care. And when you give them the tools to express their opinions about what they care about, then elected officials will listen.
Well, and then you
And
have an
that's
open discussion, which leads to better governance
exactly
anyway. So,
right.
also, if people want to get involved in your campaign for District 5, how can they do that?
Yeah, so my website's christopherkeywest.com, and more actively is my social media pages. It's Christopher Commissioner on Instagram, and then on Facebook, just search for Chris Massicotte for City Commissioner District 5, and my page will come up. And please like my page, and I post videos as often as I can. I'm trying to be better at social media. I'm not the best at
We
at
all
that.
are.
But when there's a real issue that needs to be discussed, like the parking garage, I want people to know that there is a workshop on January 27th, Tuesday at 2 p.m. at City Hall. I don't love that it's at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, but that's when they put it on. I would have preferred it to be, in the evening hours where fewer people who work, or more people who work could attend. But I can tell you, please, I will be there. And if you have a question, or if one of your listeners or viewers has a question, shoot me a direct message or whatever. I will incorporate that into what I bring to that workshop. And I'm happy the city is doing it this way. They are they're doing more than they have in the past. I don't want to give them too much credit, but they have done more than they have in
Yes.
the past in terms of getting public input, and not as much as a grand jury report would like, but they are, working on it. And it's difficult when you are trying to balance, their big developer donors and the public at large. And that's why I'm, really kind of trying to shy away from any kind of support or accepting any campaign contributions from the folks like HTA and the Walshes and stuff who do get involved in these local elections for sure, because I don't want anybody influencing my decision other than the people that live and work here, and communicate to me what it is that they're concerned about. And so that's how we're running this campaign. So if you can contribute any money, I'm not asking for the $1,000 donations like these other folks give. I'm asking for $25 because that shows support even before a single vote is cast.
Yes.
And we're not trying to run a big budget campaign here. We're just trying to show support. We're trying to show broad-based support. And you mentioned it in some of the articles you wrote about our campaign finances for some of the local campaigns. I had almost 100 donors that live in Key West. And that is, indicative of broad support where somebody is willing to put themselves down and put themselves publicly and donating, as little as $25 to show that support and to, make this a people-powered campaign and not big developers and corporation-powered campaign.
All right. Well, Chris, I appreciate you being
So,
on the show today, and we'll talk to you next time.
Ted, thank you. I really appreciate it.
All right. I'm Ted Lund. That's
All
Chris Massicotte, director or president of Last Stand of the Florida Keys, also District 5 City Commission candidate in Key West. Well, that's going to do it for another Sunday Sit Down. We'll see you next time.